Hi, this is Rabbi Rami Goldberg, and welcome to Biblical Money, powered by Israel 365, where we take a deep dive into how people of faith enhance their business by staying true to their biblical principles. We interview leading CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs to capture their wisdom to help us live our most fulfilled and faithful lives. Please like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date and informed. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Money. I am Rabbi Rami Goldberg, and joining me today from Texas. We have a lot of faithful Bible-believing Christians from Texas. So we have Galen Walters, who is a businessman, a man of God. And we were actually just talking before we got started, and I think maybe that's a great place to start. He's got a farm right out in the middle of Texas, and he brings people over who come to learn and to study both business and Bible. We were just talking about it. Tell us a little bit about your farm.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, by the way, Rob. Thank you very much. My farm is a 90-acre farm halfway between Austin and Houston. In 2007, my wife told me, I was the CEO of a company in Houston, and she said, we've had the farm for over 30 years, and she said, the Lord told me we need to build a conference center. And she took me out, showed me where it was supposed to be, and I'm like, really? So I immediately hired an architect, and knowing my wife, and went to work building a conference center. And we built a very nice conference center with 4 bedrooms in it, a wood shop on the back of it, and and a game room, and really did it right with the kitchen and all that stuff. And in 2008, hosted my first group. I finished it in September, hosted the first group in February, and we've never looked back. It's been a continual growth in the conference center. We ended up doing a thing called Kingdom Leader Lab for pastors and their wives. We did those from 2017 through 2020. Of course, COVID stopped that, and we didn't re-engage after that. But since then, I've done, just a host of groups here where we come in and work with business principles and practices around the kingdom and apply some of the tools that I've used for many years in the workplace that we've developed. 4 Ps: people, process, partnership, performance, a goal-setting system, as well as why, what, how, and wow, which is a framework for organizational excellence. And I teach those tools here and find it very applicable to churches and church leaders and leadership teams. And they starving to death for biblical leadership principles and tools that's coming out of business back into the church. So it's a unique opportunity, and one that I find to be challenging and yet very fulfilling. It really is a very fulfilling thing to see them go away and have their goals set for the year. And then I sometimes go back in and set with them quarterly, fly to their locations and help them make sure their goals are staying on task and that we accomplish what it is they set out to do. So if I can help people do that, then that's a thrill. And I do that on the side, and that's not my normal.
This is predominantly churches that are coming to you, or these are businesses that are looking for business advice, or both? Meaning you're teaching the churches business principles, and you teach the business people church principles, right?
Yeah,
Kingdom,
so
right?
it works both ways. Yeah, I'm on the board of a company out in California, and I'm working with them right now on a very big project. And lo and behold, we're talking about kingdom principles last week. So, it's an interesting opportunity to live for the Lord and be a strong Christian, and at the same time, uphold those standards in business with the ethics and morals and, the business practices that we need to be following in kingdom principles.
What are some of the questions that come out of these sessions that are either so obvious to you and so not obvious, but they're like, sometimes you have the eureka moment where you're like, holy cow, this is just unbelievable, but they don't necessarily recognize that.
There is one repeating one that happens all the time. And what I find are that church organizations tend to operate on calendars. Their planning processes are not great. So what they do, they have a calendar of events for a year, and all they do is pick up that calendar from last year and repeat it next year. They never take things away. They seldom take things away, and they keep adding to it. So they just keep wearing people out, and so they end up thinking they have to have something 7 days a week going on. And I think that's just a wrong-headed way to think about, kingdom engagement of people that have families and kids going to school and, and people having to work jobs and all that kind of stuff. So, and churches obviously depend a lot on volunteerism, and the very people that are volunteering also are having to carry on their own enterprises and their children's education and things of that sort. So I try to help them balance the planning process out and not take it from a calendar perspective, but take it from we start with a why. Why are you doing this? Why are we here? Why do we get up every day? Why are you involved in this organization? why are you volunteering? And then we move down to the what, the planning process, the analysis. We do assessments. I do an assessment that assesses their 4 quadrants of their church, and people process.
Like a SWOT analysis or something?
It's subjective. It's an easy thing for people to take. We do it very quickly, but what it does, it scores the 4 quadrants of the church. People, process, their partners, their participants, their board members, things like that, and then their leadership team. And we get a score on those 4 quadrants, and you can tell real quickly, where there's weakness inside the organization. And then we attack that weakness, not focus all of our time on the whole, trying to find the next goal. Then we set, goals around that, and then we test those goals and assign the goals, set timelines on them, make sure they're attainable. And then what we see happen are churches start attaining goals that they've just been, stumbling over themselves forever without any kind of organizational, what would you call it, disciplines, where they can get things done, And the problem is a lot of your pastors, and I'm well off base here, but a lot of the pastors' personalities are what I would call high S in the DISC system: dominance, influence, steadfastness, and conscientiousness. They're very much steadfast. They can talk about something forever without ever having to see it come to pass, without ever executing it. And so to get things done, especially in a growing organization, you really have to change that model and start executing on a plan. And that's what I help them do.
Right. I mean, it's so amazing. I remember one of my teachers, actually, when I was going for my rabbinical degree, and we had one course where he said, one of the problems with nonprofits is they often have a list a mile long. And what they do is whoever the first volunteer that comes in, you do the first thing on the list, irrespective of whether that meshes with what your skill set is. You'll have like an investment banker and they're like, well, we need a flyer made up for our next
happens
event.
All the time.
And it's like, okay, I guess and they put together a, mediocre at best flyer, and then go back to the office, work for another hour, take that $1,000 and we'll pay a graphic designer $100 or $200, whatever, and we'll have a nice flyer, and you'll have contributed way more in terms of using your capabilities. And I think that's something where organizations very often miss out on that and that skill set.
I think one of the other big misses that I see is that churches tend to want to grow a bigger church. They look at growing the church, not the people. If they can focus on growing the people, then the why, the what, the how, that's what the people bring to you. So you find people with certain skill sets where you need that skill applied, and you mentor that person into becoming a better person, more qualified person. And from there, then you end up challenging them with a project that's better. Max Dupree wrote a book called Leading Without Power. It's one of the best nonprofit leadership books I've ever read. And he has a process that's very valuable in there about mentoring, people that volunteer. And it's really sad that we fail to properly delegate. And the reason we do is pastors and rabbis get burned because they poorly delegate, and people don't do the project or don't complete the project or fail in the project or take advantage of the situation by doing something silly. And it was because it wasn't delegated to the right person. You didn't properly mentor. So there's a huge gap in nonprofits that desperately needs help. And so I do what I can do. You can only do so much, but when they do come to you and they start asking for help, I feel very obligated to help. This weekend I'm headed to St. Louis to do a 2-day leadership meeting with a church team there, and we'll be over in Branson, Missouri, leading that for 2 days. It's a real honor to get to do that, because you do see, this is my 3rd year to do it with this church, and you see the growth. I mean, I see the change. I see the organization tune. I see them become much more focused on execution of a strategy, and it's sound and it's working, and it's really very satisfying when you see that happen.
Yeah, and I think it's so amazing to be able to take what you've learned in the business world and bring that back. Let's flip it the other way. How have you mentored in the other direction? You have a young businessman who's really excited, but maybe his faith is not not just there, or sometimes he's coming to you with an idea saying, hey, I have this amazing idea. And you're like, I'm not sure the IRS would like that so much, but
Happens.
how have you mentored? Yeah. How have you mentored in the other direction?
Yeah, I do that quite a bit. I have a lot of guys because I've been doing this 44 years. And when you're part of a church organization, and I was raised in it from 3 years old, my youngest memories was in that same church organization, and I've been around it forever. So there's 6 million of us, but at the same time, I probably know 20,000 of them. We've just all been around each other and moved from church to church, and then part of the organizational structure at headquarters and helping them up there. And so you get to be known for certain things. And mine happens to be that I've been an entrepreneur for 44 years. So I do get a lot of pastors and friends sending me people in their church that are wanting to go into business or are failing in business. That there was a recent situation where a lady was a home health care nurse and had set up her own home health care service, left her company she was working for and tried to set up her own without really doing the proper planning or having the proper resources to support herself. And she was dying. I mean, it was horrible. And her pastor called me and said, would you mind talking to her? I was going up to do a 3-day event for them. And he said, when you come up, I got somebody I want you to talk to. And she was there waiting on me when I got there, actually, the afternoon.
Literally at the door, right?
He said, she's in the conference room. She's not leaving until she meets with you. So, I go in and it was encouraging that people have the desire and the passion and the want to, just they have ambition. And I hate to see ambition get squashed with failure, because it's unfortunate that sometimes one mistake, one failure destroys your ambition and you feel like a loser. And the reality is, I've gone through a chapter 11. I mean, I've restarted business 3 times. I mean, you just don't stop. I mean, you don't lose your vision. You pick it up and rebuild it and reclassify it, requalify yourself and learn what you messed up on the first time, and you learn a lot. If you can look at
and make different mistakes the second time, right?
Different ones, yes, you do. I mean, I grew my first business. I'll never forget it. I grew it from zero in our garage, and my wife and we both left Safeway stores and started the company up. I left Safeway stores, joined the Houston Fire Department, became a pipe and ladderman on a fire truck, so I would have insurance for my 3-year-old daughter and my wife. But then I only worked 9 days a month, so I used the 20 days in the office to do illustration and draw, and it took off. I did $1 million the first year, 3.3 the second year, 9 million, 17, 21, 27, 34, 36, chapter 11. But back that up, I was doing $9 million in revenue a year and did not have a CFO. I had no CFO. I had never been a CFO. I was running by the seat of my pants. I didn't know I needed a CFO. I'm an artist. I came out of art school. I came out as a pencil illustrator and ended up in business after being in Safeway's advertising department for 7 years. So, you learn on the fly a lot. You make horrible mistakes. And what I'm trying to do is, after 44 years of success and failure, is to try to help some of these young, Christian or kingdom business people not make the same mistakes. And if they can listen and learn, then I feel like I've accomplished something for them.
Yeah, it really is. There's actually a rabbinic text where he talks about being in the maze outside of the king's palace, and you kind of being perched up on top, and that person telling you, no, go this way, go that way, and the book is there to guide you. This particular book, called The Ways of the Just, is there to guide you and say, okay, don't make the right turn, even though it looks good for right now, but really go left. It's a little harder, but it ultimately will get you out of that maze. So, but that's amazing. So this is something where you just are meeting with people regularly, and you kind of thrown out. You never know what business is going to come.
And what's crazy, I've run a company for 44 years, and it's changed 3 different times, and then in 2023 we purchased a company out of Tel Aviv, an Israeli-based e-commerce company called Store.ai, and it was Orthodox Jewish owned, and investors are all Orthodox Jews. And so that was my first real interaction with the Jewish community head on. I'll say head on because it was an interesting. We worked together so well because we found out that we both were monotheistic, and I'm not Trinitarian, I'm monotheistic. So it was an interesting journey for them and for me. They'd never met anybody like me, and I'd really never met anybody like them. And but what's really interesting about this is in 2010, I just had a real burden to study Israel. And so I started looking for resources, and I found this group called Root Source over in Galen Ariel. I don't know if you know him. I think you might know of him. But I found those guys.
Yeah, from him and Bob Odell
Bob Odell, yep.
Are two brothers from a different mother,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Now I know Bob Odell very well, and great people. But Galen, I met them by signing up for their little videos, and I took 87 of those things over a 2-year period, and they were 30 minutes long each. So, I mean, I devoured them. I just couldn't wait to get the next ones, and so I learned so much about Judaism and about the Jews and about the surrounding areas of Israel and the enemies within and without, and you just learn so much and how Jews pray and the whole the whole thing, really. I studied every element that I could. And I didn't know why I was doing it until 23 when I bought the company in Tel Aviv. And, they took me into a whiteboard, and it was so funny because they took me in and they were going to fill out on the board kind of the way the Torah and all the different books. And so he had to go to the restroom, and when he came back, I'd filled it all out for him. And he walked in, he looked around, he's like, "Who came in here?" I said, "I did that." And he's like, "Where did you learn that?" And I said, "Well," and I told him about the study I'd done. I said, "I didn't know why I did it, but now I think I understand why the Lord led me that direction." It has been a real journey, extraordinary journey for me. We bought that company in January. We bought one in Toronto that couldn't have been any more opposite than Orthodox Jews. So we bought a company in Toronto in December, and then I was CEO of that until September. I took all the cost. We got all the cost out and got it profitable, got it to break even in November. But in September, I stepped aside and became chairman so I could pour myself back into more consulting and got out of the day-to-day on the company and elevated one of our guys up to CEO. So today, I'm chairman of the board of that company, but I stood back up Go Think Consulting, and what I'm doing is nonprofit and business consulting, and it's kingdom-based. I mean, it's exactly what I'm doing. So I still run the company from a chairman's position, but at the same time, and that's all e-commerce and technology. And, I got people in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, Toronto, Macedonia, Israel. But at the same time now, I am very focused on the conference center here and on the work I do with Go Think Consulting. I think it's much more satisfying, if I can say that. It's not profitable. I mean, it's not compared to running a company like that. Running a consultancy that you're helping nonprofits, I mean, they just don't pay the same. You can't charge the same. You don't think the same. And it's not really about the money at that point. It's more about, how can you help move the needle for them to where they can be more effective in whatever their journey is. And if I can make them more effective and help them be more effective, then I think I've really accomplished something that's kingdom worthy.
Yeah, I mean that to an extent that our businesses are there to support the kingdom and that God's presence in this world, and we have to use those principles again on both sides of the aisle. Whether it's helping our nonprofits be more effective, and it's helping our companies be more religious in nature and more faithful. And obviously that's going to mean different things depending on the nature of the business. So let's now take a step.
But one of the points there I'd like to make real quickly on the business side, typically it's about money, and you and I both know what money does to people. And so even with the best of intentions, a religious person gets into business, the money changes them, or it has the ability to change. And the love of it is truly the root of all evil, as the scripture says. And so we have to be careful that the money gets utilized and we properly realize what position we've been put in with that money and the responsibility that comes with it to be kingdom minded. So that I'll shut up there. But I think that's a big lesson that I work on a lot with business guys, because it's how much money can we make It's like, yeah, okay, that's great, but what are you going to do with it? When you make it, what do you do?
It's interesting, and something I've pointed out on this podcast in the past, but I think about very often is all of the forefathers were wealthy, right?
Yeah,
Meaning it's not something God blessed
yeah,
them with
sure.
money, and it's not that we have to give it away. And sometimes people think, okay, if I just give it away, then all things will be good. But ultimately, what God wants us to do is be good stewards of that money, is to take advantage and figure out, okay, if I've been given this, what am I going to do with it? I'll tell you one story which I heard, that a certain wealthy man comes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, which charity should I give this money to? I was blessed and I have all this money. And the rabbi turns to the man and he says, listen, if God wanted me to distribute that money, he would have given the money to me, but clearly he gave it to you. So you have to go ahead and put on your thinking cap and really
Yep.
figure this one
Good.
out, and go deep in prayer and figure out where this money could best be
That's right.
used.
That's good. I didn't mean to derail us on money, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important, because on the one hand, we need a comfort around money, which I think in America in particular, it's like money is very taboo. We don't talk about it. Israel, as you know, is much more open. Oh, what did you make? What are you making this year? What are you making next year? Much more open to talking about it. I still have a bit of American within me. So, but I think some of that taboo causes it to be something that's so hidden that it can lead to dark places. And I think that's some of what you're talking about in terms of, okay, you don't want to have that love of money, but you also you have to figure out how to steward it and use it properly.
No, that's good. Perfect.
So I'd love, let's take a step back into your past. How did you get here? You went from an artist to an entrepreneur and doing kingdom's work, God's work over here. Give me a bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I actually came up through a pretty basic education, came out of high school, went off to university. Second semester, I was very curious. I was raised as a kid. My dad said, if they can do it, you can do it. Don't ever think that. And he worked in the oil field and was poorly paid, but he just told us boys, don't ever think that you can't do something. I mean, if somebody else can do it, they put their pants on the same way you do. Learn what they're learning and go do what they do if that's what you want to do. But you're not going to work in the oil field. So he forced us not to go to the oil field. And so I was always very artistic in the family, and was probably the only one really that was artistic. And so I really had a love for art. So I go off to university, and I took the typical art, art history and, that kind of stuff. And it was just horrible. I mean, it was just deplorable education, from a standpoint of an artist. I wanted to learn how to draw more. I wasn't really worried about art history, so I was probably not the best student, to be very transparent. And the second semester, I was about halfway through it, and I get a call in class one day, and they said the dean wants to talk to you. So I went down to see the dean, and he said, what is wrong with you? I said, why? He said, the professors say that you won't stop asking questions. And I said, well, they don't teach. I said, they're doing silly things that I'm not learning anything. I just want to know if we're going to get to certain points. Can I start drawing? I mean, when do we, which class do I need to take? And I said, yeah, I ask a lot of questions. And he said, well, I think you'd be better in a vocational school. You probably don't fit the university system. So I contacted a friend of mine that was a guy named Sidney Oliphant at Fingers Furniture Store that did all the illustration at the time. This was 1970s. So he did all the illustration before photography.
There wasn't AI in those days?
Yeah, there was AI, all right. All intelligence is artificial. But so we connected, and he went to church with me, and he was a great artist. And I reached out to him and said, what would I need? What do I need to do? I should have talked to him before I went off to university, but I didn't. And I said, Sidney, what do I need to do to become an illustrator? And he said, you need to go to Texas Academy of Commercial Art. I know I know Bill Nairn there and a couple of the great artists that are there as professors. And so he said, let me see if I can get you in. And he called me back and he said, they have no openings, but I'm waiting on a phone call back from Bill Nairn. I think he's going to, do something to get you in because I told him you're a great artist. And I'm like, well, Lord, I'm not that great. I'm trying to learn to be great. And I was pretty good, but, it wasn't to the level that I needed to be. So I get a phone call back and he said, you've been accepted. You have to, you start next Monday. So I called my mom and dad and said, I'm leaving the university, but I'm going to go to Texas Academy of Commercial Art for 18 months, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. off 1 week for Christmas, and it's just going to be art all week, every day, in all mediums. And my dad said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You go, if that's what you think you need to do, it's your life. You go do it. And so he funded me to go down there, and I got a job in Safeway stores, being the booth girl, when I was at the store, and sacking and stocking and checking and all that kind of stuff. And so I'll go through the 18 months, and 2 months before I graduated, Safeway opened a division in Texas. They opened a Houston division. They had a Dallas division, but they opened the Houston division, was going to open 127 stores, and they had 21 stores at the time. And they put out an ad in the stores saying they needed a layout artist. And so I was 2 months from graduating, so I answered the fax. It was the old flip fax, and I happened to be in the booth when it came across, and I read this fax, and so I just took it, hand lettered a letter back. I had a lot of architectural drafting experience in high school, and I hand lettered a letter back, said I want the job, and I stuck it back in and sent it back to them. And I got a phone call in about 10 minutes, and the guy said, come over here tomorrow morning and interview. And so I went in to interview, and he said, you're exactly what we're looking for. You got grocery experience, and I've been in the grocery store since I was 15. You have grocery experience, you understand the business to some degree, and you have art ability, and you're taking these classes and all this stuff. Great, yeah, you start Monday. And I said, well, I can't start Monday. I need to finish college. I got two more months left. And he said, no, the job, we're opening the division office up in 7 days. I got to have somebody now, so I won't be able to hire you. And I said, well, hang on a minute. Let me call my dad. So I called my dad back, and never forget the conversation.
I called
my dad. I said, Dad,
can't see that going well.
2 months from graduating, and I got this opportunity, and I wanted to marry my wife, Mickey, but her dad said, you can't marry her until you have a job with insurance. And so you get a job with insurance, you can marry my daughter. But of course, sacking groceries and checking groceries and going to art school, you're not getting any insurance. But this job at Safeway was a full-time job with full benefits and everything. And I went back and talked to my art teachers, and all these guys were artists, and they all looked at me like I'd lost my mind and said, you don't want to go to retail. It's schlocky. You'll never be an illustrator there. I mean, it's just a waste of your energy and time. And Galen, you've had straight A's in all mediums. See, we've never seen that before. You need to become an illustrator. You'll be a great illustrator. And, I called my dad and I said, what do I need to do? And I tell him what was going on. And he said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, son. It's your life. So I left art school 2 months. I had to go in and tell him on that Monday that I was leaving, went straight to Safeway to work. And I'll never forget it. George Percorny, that owned the school, came into the room, and he said, Galen, you're making the mistake of your life. And I said, yes, sir, I probably am. I don't disagree with that, but I really need this job, and I want to get married, and it's just this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'll never get this job again. And he said, yeah, but look where you're going. You're going to the grocery business. It's horrible. Well, that's been 40-something years ago, and it's been 50-something years ago, 1975. And so I left, and what's that, 75 to 25, was that 50 years? It's been 50 years ago this year. Wow. Good Lord. Yeah. So I ended up taking the job at Safeway and graduated up through the job, became advertising supervisor and ad manager of Houston over 5 years, and hated it. Just hated the company. I didn't like the bureaucracy and EEOC and all the stuff that they had to go through to get something done. But I learned so much, and I saw an opportunity. They were using six different vendors to get an ad done, and it took us 13 weeks to pull off one ad, and we did 52 ads a year. So 13 weeks out, you're working every week on 13 weeks out. So I realized if I could pull this together under one roof, I could bring that down to 7 or 8 weeks. Well, I ended up leaving the company, joining the fire department, starting up my own business. Safeway called me. When I left Safeway, they said, you'll never come back here. You'll never work for us again if you quit. Because they had offered me 3 jobs to move around the country, and I turned them all down because of family. And so I ended up, Rami, I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to go to the fire department and do art. And lo and behold, I'm in the fire school a month and a half out of 3 months, and I get a phone call from Safeway Corporate in Oakland saying, "Can you come out here and look at a project?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "You've done 100 grand openings in Houston. We'd like for you to take on a grand opening project, global, nationally for us." So I flew out on a Saturday and met them on Monday morning and picked up this project and went back and finished my fire school, got in the fire station January 31st, February the 8th, opened my office, took on the first project for Safeway, and did $1 million the first year, and 3 the next year, and 9 the next year, 17. I mean, it was just exploding.
It's wild just to listen to the story, because it seems that every decision point went against what would be the intuition that every parent would say. You're in university, stick with university, just finish your degree. Okay. And then I'm going to vocational school. Stick with the vocational school, just finish it up. And it's like, no, I'm going to go take some what seemed to be, I'm going to say, a menial or lower level job rather than shooting for the end. And God just had a way of, like, every step along the way that, no, if you continue taking the wrong path, you'll eventually, you make too many left turns. Eventually, you're gonna go right.
Let me tell you the rest of that story about the art school. So 4 years later, after I left, I had opened a plant and put my first printing press in, and ordered my second printing press. I bought more Goss Community printing presses than anybody had ever bought in 36 months in history. It just exploded. The businesses took off. Well, this was at the $9 to $17 million growth window year. And we held an open house to introduce the company to a lot of customers and stuff. And I didn't have any idea what was fixing to happen. But my wife had told George Pokorny, she'd contacted the school and told them that I was having this open house, and they invited George Pokorny to come out. He brought me my diploma framed. It's hanging right here in my office. He brought my diploma framed, and they brought him in a wheelchair. He was on his deathbed, really, and his daughter brought him with his wife, and they came up and they rolled him out. I just started bawling, and he gave me this diploma, and he said, "We've never had anybody ever leave the school and do what you've done. Nobody's this successful." So it was I was 30 years old by this time, I think 32, 31. I was worth, $7 million, $8 million. At that time it was like all the money in the world. And I had no aspiration to become a millionaire. All that junk that people get caught up in. It wasn't about that to me. It was about building something that was worthy of the time and effort to build it and to then touch people. I've always felt that business was my opportunity to touch people in a way that really made a difference, that gave them hope, that brought them opportunity, that gave them a window to jump out of and do something powerful. And so I've always built the companies around people that wanted to be there and do something really, really special. So I constantly push for excellence. My slogan, my company's logo, the bent pencil behind me, was a lowercase d and a lowercase g at the time, and it was design graphics. So I used that DG, and I did that bent pencil at Safeway, by the way. That was designed on my table inside Safeway before I left. And
well, we won't tell them that they're going to take royalties on that idea.
But
right?
That logo is still with me today, and it stands for Bent on Excellence. And so I had shirts that said Bent on Excellence with a pencil. I changed the name of the company 4 years into Adplex, and the customers threw a fit when I got rid of the bent pencil. So I brought the bent pencil back, and I've never gotten rid of it. I've kept it mothballed while I was running at Relation Shop since 07 to this year. And as soon as I left Relation Shop the next day, I opened up Go Think, and I stood up this bent pencil as our logo again. So, there's certain things you do in your life, though, that have value to not just you, but to other people. And I think if you can ever focus on improving the lives of others, your life gets improved in the process. If we only focus on improving our life, it's a pretty selfish road, and it does lead to success or money or homes and stuff and all that stuff, but it's empty. Some of the wealthiest people in the world live an empty life, and they're miserable, and they shoot themselves, and it's like, how did that happen? How does somebody get to that level of fame and success and kill themselves? Well, their life's empty. There's no kingdom. There's no others. There's no aspiration to help people. It's about them, and it becomes a narcissistic journey that's devastating, and so God help me not to ever become a narcissist, or to, have selfish ambition to the point that I destroy people in the process. on that journey. I just don't want to do that. So, it's been the ride of my life, and I'm not done. I'm 71 next week, and I've got this consulting firm going. It's filling up. I mean, I'm booking up pretty quickly, and started in October the 1st, and so it's a wonderful journey. And I plan to do another book, and I did a book called Equipped to Lead in 2008 with Dan Sanders, which just retired from Sprout Supermarkets. But we wrote a book about the 4 Ps: people, process, partners, and performance. And I want to do another one now. So, there's, by the way, this is for real. I love talking to you. This is really, I haven't told these stories forever. So, it's kind of like.
Yeah, it's great. The late President Shimon Peres he said, so he spoke at a TED Talk when he was, I think he died 6 months later, his 90 something, and he said the definition of a young man is somebody who's definition of an old man is someone whose aspirations are less than their accomplishments, and the definition of a young man is someone whose aspirations are greater than their accomplishments. And he said, "I'm a very young man."
I want that quote. I've got to find that quote. So when you get off this,
I will send it to you, and I guess put it in the show notes as well. But yeah, it's so important to stay young, stay energetic, and be involved in projects that you're passionate about, because that's really what we're here for. I mean, retirement is this myth that I really think that has been infiltrated in the American psyche, that like, okay, somehow once I reach the age of 65, I ride off in the sunset. No, at the age of 65, you could turn around and help all the 20 and 30-year-olds build whatever they're building, and you could still be so involved and take all that wisdom and all that knowledge. Okay, you want to spend a couple more rounds on the golf course, that's okay also, but to spend that time to give back is really just amazing.
So where do you find retirement in the scriptures? I mean, I don't find it. So, I have no retirement plans. I've never planned for retirement. I don't want it. I don't want that crutch. I want to work until I fall over dead in somebody's office. Or in their church behind the pulpit or whatever it is I'm doing. But I just think that we need to apply what God's given us and the knowledge He's allowed us to gain and share it back with people. I mean, good Lord, they're dying for the knowledge, and everybody has the opportunity to share back what they've learned.
Yeah, no, the Grand Rabbi of Lubavitch is, and if you're familiar with Chabad and Lubavitch Jews, they can be found all over. And his whole thing was, in order to become a rabbi in Chabad, it's actually not so difficult. It's a pretty short process. I mean, there's different levels of rabbis, but the very, very basic is not such a difficult test. But he was very into, did you learn Aleph? Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. That's where alpha, bet, right? Aleph, bet are the first 2 letters. If you learned Aleph, if you learned A, teach someone A. And and then go the second half of your day, go learn B or go learn bet, and then teach the person. And so we should always be one step ahead. One other, someone, I heard this idea. Why was it that God didn't allow Moses to step into the land of Israel? Just one step. Let him go in, right? He was praying so hard. Please let him go in. Because you know why? Moses was the ultimate entrepreneur. What would have happened? He would have stepped into the land of Israel, and he would have turned to God, and he would have said, God, let me put down one brick of the temple. That's it. Just one, or let me lay something. I want one more step, and because that's what ultimately is. That's when things really get exciting and fun, and you're able to and you stay much younger, healthier, vibrant. And so that's it's amazing the work
there is a phenomenon too. I mean, the guys that I know that are working like I do, they're not sick. I'm not on a single medication, not one. I'm not on blood pressure medicine or anything. I mean, I just work, and I have a kinesiologist and chiropractor and natural med guy that keeps me up, and I do labs every 2 years, and other than that, I just work my tail off. I take some supplements but it's just, I think there's such a misconception about retirement and such a devaluation of the human themselves. I mean, what happens is you lose your purpose. and especially if you've worked something where you were taught. I mean, look at pastors and rabbis that leave their ministries and try to retire. They die. I mean, it's only a matter of short period of time, and that they're no longer there, because they lose their purpose. And purpose is so critical in us getting up every day and being ignited truly about the thing that we're working on. So I believe that it's a bad idea to retire, personally.
Yeah, and they also, the original idea was the average age was like age 60, when they 65, that's another reason why I guess we're bankrupting the country, right? Because you're not, everyone's hoping for that. As soon as they get that, then I'm going to take money out.
They made me take Medicare at 70, and I didn't want to take it then, but you have to take it. So they force you, but I didn't want to take it. And then they said, "Do you want to join AARP?" I said, "No. I'm not old. I'm not joining AARP. Not till I can't get out of this chair and walk. Then maybe I'll join with you."
It's getting those magazines, with the wheelchairs or whatever. My grandparents.
No, I don't want anything to do with it. No walkers here, please.
So let's give me one or two other principles that you are fond of saying, that you try to teach, that you try to give over, that we can take with us to say, okay, this is really what I need to be doing in order to push my kingdom forward, again, in my personal space or within my business.
I think there's something that I've never heard from anybody, but I recognized it back 20 years ago, and I started working with it, and I use it a lot in my courses, and that is the idea that leaders really have to have what I call spatial awareness. And what that means is you can't be such an you can't scale and grow something when you're such an expert that you're only focused on one little thing in the business. I believe that true leaders really need to be able to smell the business. I mean, it's almost like you walk in, if something's off. You see people, you see faces, you see numbers, and what happens is you learn to kind of sense the business through the spatial awareness. And that's something you have to learn. It's not something that comes really natural. It's something that you hone that skill. You get proficient in the numbers to where you understand the patterns of the numbers when they're changing and what you need to do to react to that. You know that people's faces show that they're happy, or that they're sad, or that they're upset, or they're frustrated. You can sense it when you walk past their desk, and to walk past it and not do anything is just a sin to me. I mean, if I walk past somebody and they're having a bad day and they've got a frown on their face, I am not walking past them. I stop, grab them by the shoulders, shake them a little bit. "Hey, you all right? No, what's wrong? Tell me what's going on." And I dive in. And this guy that I co-wrote the book with, I'll never forget it. Me and him flew up on a plane to Denver and went into the plant. And he said, "Let's walk through the plant real fast and go eat with the leaders." And I said, "Okay." Well, I go out in the plant, and he comes back to me 4 or 5 times over the next hour and a half saying, "Hey, we got to go. Hey, we got to go. Hey, they're waiting on us at the restaurant. Hey, we got to go." And what happened, I was going through the plant, and I realized we had a problem. We had people that were very disgruntled on the press operators level. So I started talking to the press operators, and I ended up getting them all together in a circle. I was the CEO of the company. I owned the thing. And I got them all together in a circle. I said, "What's going on? Why are you upset? What are we not doing? Tell me about it." And we started talking. Come to find out, a couple of them were having horrible marital problems, brought that to work. The boss came down, that the guy had running the plant, and beat him up pretty much in front of everybody. Everybody else took offense to it because they knew how hurt these guys were hurting. And so it turned into this almost like catastrophic event for the company because nobody listened to them. So within a matter of an hour and a half, I had it sorted out, figured out what was going on. And yes, I did. I went to lunch and met with with the guy that was running the plant for me in Denver. And for the next hour and a half, we worked through what he had done wrong and what needed to be done different, what I expected him to do when he got back. And he got back, he shut the plant down, shut all the presses off, brought everybody in, sat down, all the press operators, and sat down and apologized and told him he had missed the cue, kind of had been stressed over it.
That humility, I mean, to apologize to your whole staff, I mean, amazing.
Well, he either did that or he wasn't going to have a job, because it was what he did to the team out there was demoralizing. And you got guys that are hurting really bad, and we try to separate life from our jobs, and the reality is it's one. Your job and your life, how do you separate that? It's like church in your life. I mean, I see church, home, and work. I see this triangle. We bring all this trash into the middle of it, and then we ask God to deliver us from that. Well, it's our making. So I think we have to be very cognizant that home, work, and our God, all are interfaced into one effort. And so you either get that early on, or you just live miserable as you mess it up over and over and over. So that's some of the principles I work on, is spatial awareness and this triangle of work, family, and God, and try to figure out how to help people balance these things and become an overcomer, I call it, and live a life that's beneficial to the kingdom.
Yeah, it is so true that, and sometimes it's difficult because we do have that deadline, and it's like to pull yourself out at that particular moment. It's like, no, I'm running into this meeting. I need for you to give me this report. I know you're having a bad day. I know that your spouse is out of a job, or I don't know, something with the kids, or you guys got into a fight, or whatever. But I need this report. So I think that is always a challenge.
That story is in a book called Built to Serve that Dan Sanders, the co-author of Equipped to Lead, put that story in chapter 11 of Built to Serve. Well, Dan worked for me for 10 years and then ended up being the CEO of a supermarket. And we ended up co-authoring the book. But it was funny because I told him I'll never be in chapter 11 again. Well, he writes this book, puts me in chapter 11, and then he tells the story about him walking through the plant with me and me refusing to leave the plant till I solved the problem with the people. And it was a lesson Dan learned that he took into the grocery business, and he would go out to the stores and just stay, and just solve problems and just be there to help resolve conflicts and listen. It's servant leadership, and that's what it is. We don't have the authority to be a God. We have the authority to be a leader, and we're supposed to be part of the kingdom, and we're supposed to be a servant. So if he's a servant, we're a servant, so that's simple as it gets.
Let me tell you one mnemonic, but chapter 11. So if you take a look at the book of Samuel 2 and Kings 1. So what happens in chapter 11 in Samuel 2? That is when David has his unfolding, and where he has kind of falls from grace and has the sin with Bathsheba, and Solomon has his unfolding and loses the kingdom also in chapter 11. I don't know what came first, and I don't know if that has any historical connection, but I just know that I was able, so.
It does to me. I'll dive in. Oh, that's
take a look at that. But anyway, this has been amazing. I don't know if you have any parting messages. We'll wrap up. But this was great, and I'm sure we can go on for many more hours on this. But at a certain point, the viewership goes off. So
the only thing I have to wrap up on is that failure is not the end. Failure is the beginning of something new. Chapter 11's bankruptcies. I went to 36 million in 5 years. Chapter 11 went down to 15 million and grew it back to 70 million in 4 years when we came out of the backside and sold it to private equity. So I mean, you can't look at failure as the end of the road. It is literally the beginning of the new road. And so I think any type of failed marriage, failed work, failed business, whatever it is, don't take that as the end. It's got to be a new chapter ahead.
Such great advice, and with that we'll end. Galen, thank you so much for taking the time, giving us this advice, and I really appreciate the conversation, and hopefully look forward to an opportunity where we can be together in person.
Let's do it. I can't wait. Rami, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure and an honor. Thank you.